What if I told you that the reason your life feels stuck isn't because of bad luck, lack of time, or anyone else's fault, but because a silent part of you has made peace with staying broken? You wouldn't believe me at first. Most people don't. You see, people don't crumble because life is unfair. They crumble because they've been secretly negotiating with weakness for so long, it became normal. They let comfort wrap around them like a warm blanket, while their potential rots under the weight of tomorrow. You say you want to change. You say you're tired of feeling behind, but when the alarm goes off, you snooze it. When the truth hits too close, you scroll away. When the mirror reflects who you really are, you look down. Let's call it what it is, a quiet, invisible self-betrayal. Now let me tell you about two people, same city, same storm. Logan, Ava, both lost their jobs during a massive company downsizing in Chicago. Logan collapsed, spent weeks blaming the market, the government, the company, even his upbringing. His days blurred into nights. Netflix, fast food, self-pity dressed up as rest. But Ava, she got up the next morning, made coffee, wrote down everything she still had, her mind, her skills, her will. She applied to 17 jobs that week, rebuilt her resume, took an online course in UI design, started freelancing for small brands. 6 months later, she didn't just recover, she reinvented herself. What made the difference? It wasn't resources, it wasn't connections, it was mindset. Logan waited for change to happen. Ava became the change. See, the brutal truth is this: it's not life that breaks you, it's your own mind that lets it. You're not stuck because of your circumstances. You're stuck because deep down, part of you is still trying to reason with the part of you that doesn't want to rise. You keep making deals with your weakness. One more hour of sleep, one more scroll through social media, one more night numbing out instead of showing up. Every time you make that deal, weakness wins. And when weakness wins often enough, it becomes who you are. But what if that stopped today? What if this was the moment you stopped blaming your job, your past, your pain, and you started taking back the only thing that ever truly mattered, your mind? Because here's what the ancient Stoics knew, and what we've forgotten: you don't fix your life by fixing your circumstances. You fix your life by fixing your character. Fix your mind. Fix your life. But make no mistake, this isn't a gentle process. This isn't about positive vibes or manifesting your dreams while lying on the couch. This is war. A war against the old you. The one who always finds a reason to wait. The one who always gives in to the mood. The one who folds every time life gets hard. The Stoics didn't train to be comfortable. They trained to be clear, disciplined, and unshakable in the storm. And now, it's your turn. If you're still here, still listening, that means something inside you hasn't fully given up. That means something inside you knows this isn't all you're capable of. So I'll ask you this: when the alarm goes off tomorrow, who will show up? The tired, excuse-making version of you? Or the version that says, not today, not anymore? Before we move on to the rest of the Stoic rules that will reshape your mind and rebuild your life, piece by piece, hit that subscribe button right now. Because the content that's coming next, it's not just advice, it's armor for your future. And if this video speaks to something deep in you, drop a comment. Share it with someone who needs it. This channel is here to build warriors, not watchers. Support it, and I promise, the next videos will go even harder. Now let me ask you something. When something goes wrong in your life, what's your first instinct? A. Look outward, blame the situation or other people. B. Look inward, reflect on your own response and mindset. Drop your answer below, A or B. Let's see how many warriors we've got watching this. You say you're ready to change your life, but are you really? Because if we're being honest, most people don't need more information. They need fewer excuses. We know what to do. We just don't do it. Not because we're incapable, but because we've mastered the art of self-deception. We lie to ourselves in the language of comfort, then wonder why life never changes. That lie might sound like, "I'll start next week," or "I'm just not feeling it today," or worse, "It's not the right time." But the truth, the right time never shows up. It's not coming. You either choose to face your resistance now, or you choose to serve it forever. Jamal, a talented young man from Austin, knew this lie better than anyone. He spent years telling himself he was almost ready to start his online coaching brand. He had the skills, the voice, the heart, but he also had the habit of delay. He convinced himself that he needed one more course, one more podcast episode, one more motivational video. But all that preparation was really just avoidance dressed as productivity. And then, one phone call changed everything. His mom had been diagnosed with late-stage cancer. Suddenly, life became terrifyingly clear. The illusion of later shattered in seconds. Jamal realized that everything he'd been putting off wasn't just hurting his future, it was insulting his potential. That night, for the first time in years, he sat with the discomfort instead of running from it. He didn't numb it with distractions. He didn't post about it. He just faced the truth. He had built his life around comfort, and comfort had stolen his fire. Discomfort, he realized, wasn't the enemy. It was the test he kept failing. And it was the very thing trying to mold him into the man he was meant to be. This is what the Stoics understood with brutal clarity. They didn't pray for comfort. They trained in discomfort, because they knew that strength doesn't come from the easy days, it comes from the decisions you make when everything inside you screams for relief. Every time you avoid discomfort, you strengthen your inner coward. Every time you face it head-on, you vote for the stronger version of yourself. That's why Stoicism isn't soft. It doesn't offer pity. It offers perspective. When you feel like quitting, the Stoics ask, who's making that call, your values or your emotions? When your mind whispers, just skip the gym today, Stoicism answers, what kind of future are you protecting by avoiding the hard things? If you want to transform your life, don't start with dreams, start with discipline. One of the most powerful things you can practice is what I call a discomfort ritual, a deliberate daily choice to lean into what you'd rather avoid. It could be a cold shower at dawn, a 20-minute walk in total silence, without music or screens, a conversation you've been avoiding, a task you've procrastinated for weeks, not to punish yourself, but to train your mind to stop associating discomfort with danger and start associating it with growth. Because here's the deeper truth. The things you avoid today become the regrets that haunt you tomorrow, and the hard things you do today become the character you carry for life. You will never become unshakable by running from what shakes you. You will never grow by only doing what feels safe. And you will never earn peace by protecting your pain. So, ask yourself honestly, what lie have you been telling yourself to avoid discomfort? That you're too busy, that you're not ready, that you're not like those disciplined people. Burn it all. Burn the narrative that says you need perfect conditions. Burn the idea that waiting makes you wiser. Burn the belief that discomfort is something to escape. Because on the other side of discomfort is clarity, confidence, and power, but you'll never reach it by scrolling past it. The only way to grow is to go through, and that means doing the hard thing, especially when you don't feel like it. Because the storm won't wait for you to feel ready. The battle won't pause until your motivation returns. But you can move anyway. You can act with intention. You can train your soul to respond with strength even when your body trembles. That's the kind of resilience Stoicism was built on. And that's the kind of life waiting for you, if you're brave enough to face the friction. There's a moment in every person's life when they're forced to stop looking outward and start looking in the mirror. For some, it comes quietly. For others, it shows up like a wrecking ball. For Elena, it came in the form of a broken engagement, a failing freelance career, and the gut-wrenching realization that the chaos in her life wasn't a coincidence. It was a reflection that Elena had built a name for herself as a talented photographer in San Francisco. Her work was raw, emotional, and deeply expressive. But her personal life told a different story. Relationship after relationship collapsed. Friendships dissolved. Her business stalled. And the common denominator in every broken thing was her. She told herself she was just too intense for most people, that others couldn't handle her ambition, that her independence intimidated them. But deep down, she knew better. The late-night outbursts, the cold silences, the need to control every outcome, it wasn't strength. It was fear wearing a mask. It wasn't until she attended a silent retreat in Sedona, surrounded by strangers and stripped of distraction, that the truth finally surfaced. Alone with her thoughts, with nothing to numb the discomfort, Elena confronted a reality she had spent years avoiding. She had been the architect of her own suffering. Most people are never taught how to own their mistakes. We're taught to hide them, explain them, soften them. We're told to forgive ourselves quickly, to move on without truly facing the damage. But Stoicism doesn't offer that kind of softness. It invites you to stare directly into the fire of your failure and stay there long enough to become someone new. The Stoics didn't fear their flaws. They studied them. They believed every scar was a lesson, every error a mirror, every regret a map. They knew that radical responsibility wasn't about drowning in shame. It was about reclaiming your power. Because here's the truth: you cannot heal from what you refuse to name. You cannot rebuild a life that you won't admit you broke. Seneca said, a gem cannot be polished without friction. That friction is what most people avoid. But the ones who endure it, they come out unrecognizable the best way. Elena began her transformation with a simple but brutal exercise. She wrote a letter to herself, a confession. She listed every pattern she'd repeated, every person she'd hurt, every time she abandoned her own standards. No justifications, no edits, no sugarcoating, just truth. She read that letter out loud to herself every morning for 30 days, not to punish herself, but to remind herself that who she had been was no longer acceptable. That the past didn't define her, but it did demand respect. That real growth doesn't come from pretending nothing happened. It comes from standing in the ashes of your decisions and choosing to rebuild with honesty. Radical responsibility means no more blame, no more pointing fingers at your parents, your ex, your boss, or society. It means asking, what did I allow? What did I ignore? Where did I betray myself? It's not weakness to admit fault. It's the beginning of strength. Because once you own it, no one can use it against you. Once you face it, it no longer controls you. And once you rise from it, your past becomes your proof knot, your prison. The modern world is soft when it comes to accountability. It tells you to love yourself as you are. But what if who you are isn't who you're meant to be? What if loving yourself also means holding yourself to a higher standard? Owning your truth doesn't mean beating yourself up. It means being willing to stop the performance and start the process. It means letting go of the victim narrative. It means taking full custody of your future. Elena is no longer defined by her failures. She's defined by how she responded to them. She rebuilt her business, one disciplined day at a time. She repaired the relationships she could, and she forgave herself for the ones she couldn't. She still keeps that letter. Not as a wound, but as a reminder that she chose growth over guilt. The Stoics understood that responsibility is not a burden, it is a gift. Because when you own your mistakes, you also own your power to change. You no longer wait for someone to rescue you. You become the one who rescues yourself. So the question is not whether you've messed up. You have. We all have. The question is whether you're willing to face it. Not with shame, but with clarity. Not with fear, but with fire. Because once you do, everything changes. Your story no longer owns you. You own it. and that's when real transformation begins. Chris used to be everywhere. If you followed fitness content out of Miami, you probably saw his face. Instagram stories filled with gym motivation, live Q&As about discipline, daily posts packed with quotes. He talked loud, posted often, and believed that visibility equaled value. He built a following. He built momentum. But somewhere along the way, he lost himself. It started with burnout, the constant performance, the non-stop engagement, the pressure to always be inspiring. It drained him. Then came the heartbreak, a public breakup that exposed just how fractured his private world had become. In the aftermath, Chris did something unexpected. He disappeared. No farewell post, no explanation, just silence. People assumed he was done. Some said he quit. Some said he cracked. But in truth, Chris was finally beginning. For the first time in years, he stopped performing and started becoming. What the world called silence was actually strategy. What looked like retreat was renewal. The Stoics would have understood. They knew that power was never about being loud. It was about being grounded. Epictetus taught that silence is not the absence of voice, but the presence of discipline. It is the refusal to waste energy on what does not matter. It is the ability to sit with yourself and not need the world to validate your presence. In a culture addicted to noise, silence is rebellion, and in a life scattered by distraction, silence is precision. Chris began to rebuild himself through presence. No cameras, no posts, just long, quiet mornings, writing in a notebook with no audience, training without filming, walking 4 miles through the streets of Miami with no headphones, just breath and footsteps. The silence stripped away his ego and reintroduced him to his essence. That kind of silence is uncomfortable at first. It confronts you. In the quiet, you hear the thoughts you've drowned out, the doubts, the fears, the regrets. But if you stay with it long enough, silence does something powerful. It makes you honest, it makes you focused, and it makes you dangerous in the best way. There is a storm that lives inside every person. Most try to silence it by making noise. They talk constantly, post everything, defend their every move. But the Stoics teach the opposite. They teach you to still the storm by turning inward, by mastering your attention, by making your silence so intentional that it becomes louder than words. Chris learned that not every emotion requires a reaction. Not every insult deserves a response. Not every thought needs to be voiced. In fact, the more he stayed silent, the more power he reclaimed. People didn't know what he was thinking, what he was building, what he would do next, and that uncertainty became his shield. In his absence, he became untouchable. Silence is not withdrawal, it is control. It is knowing when to speak and when to wait, when to move and when to be still, when to hold the line instead of broadcasting your battle. You don't need to prove your growth with words. Let your consistency speak. Let your habits speak. Let your stillness be your strategy. Because when you are no longer addicted to being seen, you become free to actually see yourself, your values, your direction. There is strength in being unreadable. When you stop broadcasting your every thought, people lose their ability to manipulate you. When you keep your process private, your progress compounds in peace. And when your moves are intentional, your life becomes a quiet storm, calm on the surface, powerful underneath. The Stoics believed that the most effective leaders were not the ones who shouted commands, but the ones who modeled virtue in silence. They acted with clarity. They spoke with purpose. They moved with intent. And when they didn't need to speak, they didn't. Not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Chris eventually came back online, but he was different. Fewer words, more depth, less noise, more substance. He didn't need to say he had changed. You could feel it. His silence had taught him to lead with presence, not performance. And in that stillness, he found something he had never felt at the height of his popularity: real peace. So the next time you feel pressured to explain yourself, to defend your progress, to prove your worth with noise. Ask yourself one question. Who are you trying to convince them, or you? The truth is, you don't need to say a word. Just live in such a way that your alignment speaks for you. Build in silence. Move with purpose. Let your actions echo louder than your voice ever could. That is the quiet storm. That is real power. Rachel sat in front of her laptop night after night with 1,000 unwritten sentences living inside her. She wasn't just a single mom in Denver raising 2 kids on her own. She was a storyteller, a thinker, someone who had something powerful to say. But the screen remained blank. Not because she lacked ideas, not because she lacked time, but because something deeper held her back. The fear of being seen. She had notebooks full of outlines and half-finished chapters tucked in drawers and cabinets. Every time she got close to publishing her first book, she heard the same voices, quiet but convincing. Who do you think you are? No one is going to care. You're not a real writer. These weren't voices from strangers. They were echoes from her past. The teacher who once told her her stories were too personal. The friends who rolled their eyes when she said she wanted to self-publish. The relatives who only ever saw her as just a mom. What Rachel didn't realize at the time was that her real enemy wasn't external. It wasn't her schedule or her lack of resources. It was the unconscious belief that she needed permission to be extraordinary. Permission to change. Permission to grow. Permission to take up space in a world that never clapped for her. But life never hands out permission slips. And the longer you wait for someone to validate you, the longer you delay becoming who you truly are. The Stoics understood this. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we love ourselves more than others, yet we care more about their opinion than our own. That contradiction is what keeps people small. It's what convinces you to shrink every time you're about to rise. It's the invisible leash that tugs at your potential. The moment you try to step into it, Rachel finally reached a breaking point. It wasn't some big dramatic moment. It was simple. Her son, only 8 years old, found one of her drafts on the kitchen table and asked, "Mom, did you write this?" When she said yes, he looked at her and said, "Then why doesn't the world know?" That night, she didn't write because she was inspired. She wrote because she was done waiting for permission. What if the person you're waiting for approval from is less courageous than you? What if their doubts have nothing to do with your path and everything to do with their own fear of change? The truth is, not everyone will celebrate your growth. Some people only loved the version of you that stayed silent, agreeable, predictable. Because your evolution forces them to face their own stagnation, your ambition becomes their mirror. And not everyone is ready to look. But the Stoics remind us that we are not here to please. We are here to pursue virtue, to live with intention, to embody courage in the face of discomfort. You cannot chase greatness and approval at the same time. One will always require the death of the other. Rachel published her first book 6 months later. It didn't hit a bestseller list, but that wasn't the point. The point was that she did it, quietly, boldly, without asking anyone to clap for her. She wrote the book she needed to write. She became the woman she used to dream of being, and in doing so, she gave her children a living example of what it looks like to stop shrinking and start standing tall. If you are waiting for someone to understand you before you take action, you may wait forever. If you are hoping to be accepted before you change, you will never evolve. If you need applause to move forward, you will only ever move when it's convenient for others. There is a power that comes when you stop begging to be seen and start showing up as if you already belong. When you stop performing and start embodying. When you realize you don't have to be qualified to begin you. Qualify yourself by beginning. The world does not get to define you. Your actions do. And if you're bold enough to act without permission, to choose without approval, to grow without applause, then you are already walking the Stoic path. A path not paved by popularity, but by purpose. So the next time fear asks, "Who do you think you are?" answer it without hesitation. I am the one who doesn't wait. I am the one who doesn't explain. I am the one who no longer needs to be validated. I've given myself permission, and that is enough. Damien built two versions of himself. One lived online, sharp, articulate, motivated, the kind of man who shared productivity tips with clean infographics and inspirational captions. People followed him for his discipline. They reposted his quotes. They admired his structured routines. He looked like someone who had it all figured out. But the second version lived in silence behind the screen. He struggled to get out of bed most mornings. His apartment in Seattle stayed dark until late afternoon. Meals were skipped or replaced with junk. Deadlines missed. Promises to himself broken again and again. The version he presented to the world was miles apart from the one he woke up next to each day. He didn't feel like a liar. He felt stuck, because part of him still believed that looking like you had it together would eventually make it true. That if he just kept up the aesthetic of success, the reality would catch up. But life doesn't bend to image. It bends to action. And the distance between what you believe and how you live isn't just uncomfortable. It's corrosive. The Stoics had no tolerance for this kind of disconnection. They believed that philosophy wasn't for appearance. It was for application. You don't talk about your values. You live them. You don't explain what matters to you. You prove it in silence. You don't post discipline. You practice it when no one is watching. Damien hit his breaking point on a Sunday evening. He was scrolling through his own profile, trying to draft another caption about consistency, when he realized he hadn't done a single thing that week he'd be proud of. He felt exhausted, not from effort, but from pretending. Pretending to be solid when his habits were hollow. Pretending to be grounded when he was barely surviving. And for the first time, he asked himself the question he'd avoided for years. What would it look like to live in full alignment with who I say I am? He didn't just want clarity. He wanted congruence. The next morning, Damien deleted his scheduling apps, canceled everything that wasn't essential. He stopped trying to optimize his life and started simplifying it. He created something he called the alignment audit. Each night, he asked himself 3 questions. Were my actions aligned with my values? Were my choices a reflection of who I want to become? Did I live today as the man I claimed to be? At first, the answers were hard to face. There were days when he failed all 3. But instead of spiraling into guilt, he saw the beauty in the brutal honesty. Because at least now, he wasn't hiding from it. The greatest power Stoicism offers is not perfection. It is precision. The ability to look at your life without flinching and say, this is not it yet, but I know what to do next. Damien stopped chasing what looked good and started doing what felt right. He walked for an hour each morning without his phone. He kept his phone in another room after 8 p.m. He returned to the gym, not to take pictures, but to rebuild discipline. He called his father for the first time in years, not to fix everything, but to begin something honest. He didn't need to tell the world he was changing. His habits spoke loud enough. That's what alignment is. It's not about clean aesthetics or curated routines. It's about integrity. It's when your inner world and outer world stop arguing. When what you value and how you live finally shake hands. The reason most people feel empty isn't because they're failing. It's because they're out of sync. They say they value health, but they sabotage it nightly. They say they want peace, but they live in chaos. They say they seek growth, but they repeat the same distractions. Alignment doesn't feel glamorous. It feels quiet, steady, sometimes lonely. But in that quiet, something powerful takes root. A self-respect that doesn't need applause. A calm that doesn't need constant reassurance. A clarity that no external chaos can disrupt. Damien never went back to the old version of himself. Not because he hated it, but because he outgrew it. He now builds in silence, moves without announcement, lives in a way that makes the next version of himself proud before anyone else notices. You don't need to become a different person overnight. You just need to stop lying to yourself. You don't need another plan. You need to follow through on the one you already made. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be aligned. When your actions match your principles, peace follows. When your habits reflect your truth, confidence builds. And when your days are lived in alignment, your life no longer needs performance. It becomes proof. The Stoics didn't leave behind philosophies to admire. They left behind instructions to embody. And now the question is simple. Will you keep performing a life, or will you finally begin living one that's real? The only way out is through, and the path is paved with choices that whisper who you really are. Every hour, every habit, every day, choose the truth, then walk it, quietly, unshakably, completely. Logan lost himself in comfort. Ava rose through the ashes of rejection. Jamal broke through years of delay, the moment life demanded his courage. Elena faced the mirror and reclaimed her story. Chris turned down the volume of the world to hear his own voice again. Rachel stopped waiting for applause and started building in silence. Damien shed performance and embraced alignment. Each of them came from different places. Each faced a different battle, but they all found the same truth. Hiding beneath the noise, the fear, the excuses, they realized that change isn't something that happens to you. It's something you fight for. Not once, but every day. They didn't wait for the perfect moment. They didn't wait for permission. They didn't wait to feel ready, because they finally understood that life doesn't reward the person who waits. It rewards the one who acts despite the fear, despite the pressure, despite the odds. If you look closely at their journeys, you'll see a pattern, a stoic thread that ties them together. Each one had to break free from the lies they told themselves. Each one had to face discomfort and own their truth. Each one had to stop performing and start living from a place of discipline, clarity, and deep internal alignment. Logan had to stop making deals with his weakness. Ava had to lean into uncertainty with purpose. Jamal had to meet discomfort like a test. Elena had to own her past and rise with intention. Chris had to relearn the language of silence. Rachel had to stop begging for the world's approval and start walking boldly in her own direction. Damien had to let go of appearances and finally live in harmony with the values he claimed to believe. Their paths weren't perfect. None of them had easy transformations. There were setbacks, doubts, silent battles that nobody saw. But what mattered wasn't how fast they changed. What mattered was the moment they stopped running and decided to face it all. And that's what Stoicism is about. It's not about never feeling pain. It's about not being ruled by it. It's not about removing emotions. It's about not being enslaved by them. It's not about appearing strong. It's about being strong in the moments that count most, when no one is watching, when the applause stops, when you're the only one who has to believe in yourself. So what can you take from their stories? The first lesson is this: your life is your responsibility. No one is coming to save you. The people who broke you won't fix you. The job you lost won't come knocking again. The second chance you're waiting for won't land on your lap. You are the builder. You are the architect. You are the one. The second lesson is discomfort is not something to avoid. It's a signal, a compass, a teacher. When things feel hard, you're not being punished. You're being prepared. The third lesson is that silence, discipline, and alignment are your tools. Use them daily. Cut the noise. Choose your actions with intention. Build habits that honor who you want to become, not who you've been pretending to be. And finally, live your life in such a way that you no longer need to explain who you are. Let your choices speak. Let your focus speak. Let your presence speak. Not with volume, but with consistency. This isn't just a motivational message. It's a call to action. A reminder that you're not broken, you're just untrained. That strength isn't found in moments of hype. It's forged in moments of solitude, honesty, and stillness. So take a moment now and reflect. Which part of this story felt like it was about you? Was it the avoidance, the pretending, the waiting? Or was it the quiet realization that something has to change? Here's a question for you to answer in the comments. What's one truth you've been avoiding but know you need to face starting today? A. I've been waiting for permission to start. B. I've been avoiding the hard work that I know will set me free. Drop your answer below and let others learn from your honesty. Let's turn this into a space where truth and growth live louder than fear. If this story struck something deep in you, hit that subscribe button right now. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, because there's more coming. More real stories, more brutal truth, more timeless wisdom from the ancient world, forged into the kind of strength we need today. Support this channel not because it's perfect, but because you're ready for content that doesn't just entertain but transforms. Fix your mind, fix your life, and let's grow together.